Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC Des Moines, headlined by Corey Sandhagen and Davison Figueiredo. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. Now, if you want to become a client, link down in the description. Already have a couple plays up for clients. Going to be adding to that always as we get closer to fight night. Now, UFC 314, we crushed it, cashed nearly 12 units of profit, and last weekend, we did not come in with profit, end up giving a little bit of that back because of Mikel Pereira, who pretty much decided not to fight. Can't really cap that guy not really doing anything. I still think there's some shady business going on that one, but again, nothing you can do there. We ended up cashing in on a few other plays there, including Ian Gary, and got us back a little bit of that loss there. So with that being said, we move on to this weekend, and I am excited about it. We have a good card here that actually is pretty solid overall. So with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Corey Sandhagen and Davison Figueiredo. Now, we've got Corey here sitting at minus 520 on the comeback. You've got Davison Figueiredo plus 350. Now, this is an interesting fight here where you first have Corey Sandhagen coming off a loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, and you've got Figueiredo, who also just came off a loss to Peter Yan, where he pretty much got beat up on the feet, wasn't able to really implement his game plan, and ended up taking the loss there. Now, Davison Figueiredo, as we do know, is the former flyweight champion. And, since he's moved to bantamweight, he's 3-1 over that span, has looked good in certain spots. Going out there beating Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, Marlon Vera, some nice wins. But the one thing that he's really done is really implementing a wrestle-heavy game plan. And that's really what has led him to getting some of these victories here. He going out there looking to, land the bigger shots, but really pushing that type of wrestling pace, winning positionally and banking rounds pretty much is what he has found success with. Now, with that being said, Figgy is going to be massively undersized in this fight. There's no doubt about it. It's also just he's going to be undersized in this division overall. And obviously for the reasons is the fact he's now 37 years old, and cutting down to flyweight is just very tough, very taxing on the body. And I think it's a little bit of a give and a take between really these two divisions for him, because when you're looking at your what it helped you with, there's no doubt it's going to help his cardio. There's no doubt. And we saw that in the flyweight division where, cardio was not there, but he was a big guy for the division. But also the fact now he's going to lose that physicality, and that's something that I think really was good on his tool belt, where he was able to kind of utilize that where things got tough. He could move forward, look to throw those big shots, look to, kind of drag guys to the ground. And again, that would work. He would have that power advantage over those guys in the flyweight division. Now, not only the fact that is he going to be undersized, but also now you got to add in the fact that he is going to be a guy that just doesn't push out that type of volume. And that's something that has been, kind of problematic in certain spots in his career. But in the flyweight division, it's a little different because of the power advantages that he does have over these guys. But you look at it, he lands under 3 significant strikes per minute while absorbing over 4. And then you've got Corey, who lands over 5 significant strikes per minute, but absorbs less than 4. So you do have the volume there for him. And the thing that really worked for Davison in the flyweight division is he didn't have to push that type of volume. He didn't have to because of the fact that he would have that power advantage. He could rock a guy, hurt him, drop him, win the round just by, really landing one clean, hard shot that would wobble the opponent. And that, to me, really isn't going to happen as much in this division here. I think that's also why this line is where it is currently. And then also you got to look at the fact that I do think that there is no doubt that the better minute winner between these two guys is going to be Corey Sandhagen. I think the volume will be there. He's really crisp on the feet, stance switching, making it very difficult for his opponents. And I do think that it's going to really force Figueiredo that I think he needs takedowns here again. I don't think he can stand at range, at distance against Corey Sandhagen and find a lot of success. He has to look for those takedowns. Now, Umar was 5 for 13 on takedown attempts. I don't really see, Figueiredo finding better success than him in this fight here at all. I think that it's going to have to be really pushing that type of pace. Corey is an elite level striker at distance, and I think it's going to really cause a lot of problems here for Figueiredo. And lastly, you look at the fact that Corey pushes out that type of volume, but he also stays safe, and he's a guy that also doesn't get finished. Out of his 14 UFC fights, he's only been finished one time. That was against Aljamain Sterling by submission here, and this is a spot here where I do think Figueiredo being at this division will help his cardio, will help this fight get to the later rounds, and I just think Corey outlands him throughout this fight. I don't think Corey has the big power that can put, one shot, can put him away unless he's doing these flashy things that he's, these jumping knees like he did to Frankie Edgar, or these, spinning wheel kicks. All these things that he has done were really impressive. I just don't think he's going to do that to Figueiredo here. So this is a spot where I'm looking at Corey Sandhagen to win by points. I don't think he's going to be able to put Figueiredo away, but I think he will dominate the fight overall. So in this spot, you got Corey Sandhagen minus 500 or minus 520 around. And I think Corey by points is sitting around minus 140. I think it's a very likely outcome and probably how he gets the job done. So I'm going Corey Sandhagen by points minus 140. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Santiago Ponzinibbio minus 118 on the comeback. You got Daniel Rodriguez minus 102. Now, this is going to be an absolute battle for the ages. And when I'm saying that, this is just two old guys. They're two 38-year-olds that are on the decline. It's pretty clear we're seeing where these guys are kind of headed for both of them here. Both of them are having some rocky, performances here. You've got Ponzinibbio, who's 3-4 out of his last 7. You've got D-Rod, who's 4-3 out of his last 7. And you can clearly see that things are starting to just go on the downturn for both of these guys here. Now, the biggest advantage that D-Rod will have in this fight is going to be his volume. There's no doubt that he pushes out a solid volume, solid pace, and you saw it over his last 2 fights. Even now, he's still pushing up that kind of volume, had over 120 strikes in each of his last 2 fights against Calvin Gastelum and Alex Morono, and that's pretty impressive. You got to give him that, but the one thing he doesn't have is power, especially at this point. I don't really see, he'll keep touching you, he'll keep throwing out that good volume, he'll touch you, he's landing, but it's just not really a lot that's really going to hurt an opponent. Now, we have seen Ponzinibbio, both of these guys, I don't think really absorb shots very well at all, but the harder hitter between these two guys is definitely going to be Ponzinibbio. And I do think that most of what really D-Rod does is box. He's just really just a straightforward boxer. And I just think, again, if you're going to look at really what these guys do, or their, the arsenal of weapons that they have, it's got to be Ponzinibbio who has more. He's have the better combinations. I think he's going to be the more technical striker. I think he's going to have the faster hands between these two guys as well. And I just think he's a more skilled, more well-rounded fighter. And I think he's going to look to move forward and really look to bring this fight to Rodriguez, because when you're looking at this, I don't really think that, Ponzinibbio is a guy who likes to, he's a kill or be killed kind of guy. He's going to come forward, he's going to throw heavy, and he's just going to be willing to take the shots and just go for it. Where I think D-Rod also does have that in him, but I just think he doesn't have anything that's going to keep Ponzinibbio at bay, at range. And I think that's where Ponzinibbio is going to find a lot of success. He does have a lot of the power. 4 of his last 5 wins are by knockout, and 3 of those happened late in fights. And I think that actually is a great takeaway when I was going back and watching fights, is that he does carry that power late. 2 of those knockouts were in the 3rd round. 1 of them was in the 4th round. So this is a guy that also can push through adversity. There's been moments where we have seen this guy hurt, multiple times. Carlston Harris, we actually did have a 4-unit play on Ponzinibbio in that fight. And even in that fight there, Carlston Harris does have some power. At least he does. But again, late you did see Ponzinibbio fight through some tough spots and land the big shot. And I think that's what he can do against Rodriguez, moving forward, throwing those big shots. I do also think that he can look to get takedowns. I think Ponzinibbio has the opportunity to look to level change. It's not that he's some guy that's going to consistently do that over 15 minutes, but the opportunity, I think, is there against Rodriguez, who is very susceptible to being taken down. In his 2 most recent losses, Kelvin Gastelum was 4 for 4 on takedowns. Neil Magny was 5 for 7 on takedowns. And even Ponzinibbio 2 fights ago against Muslim Salikov, he took him down twice. So I do think that there is that path. At least it changes the pace and gives Rodriguez a lot of different looks, a lot of things to worry about, including that power, including possible takedowns and marching forward. I do think Ponzinibbio at this price is pretty solid. It's going to be a little dicey. I'm sure there's going to be moments of, for both of these guys and some sloppiness, but I do think Ponzinibbio is the more well-rounded fighter and does have that power upside. So I'm going Sandhagen Ponzinibbio to get the job done. Next one we're talk about here is Sidey minus 130 on the comeback. You had Cameron Smotherman plus 120. Now, I was actually pretty impressed, with the most recent fight for Cameron Smotherman. It was a very short notice fight against Jake Hadley. Now, Jake Hadley isn't this elite level fighter, but I think he's a pretty solid fighter. There are some things that he can do well, but I really liked what I saw from Cameron there, where you got a guy coming in at extremely short notice. And even with there, he outlanded Hadley 96-60. I thought that was absolutely impressive there. Had some good boxing. And I do think that's where he can find success here against Sidey in this spot here. I think he's got the better boxing. I think that he's got the volume, I think, can be there. Sidey, no doubt, can push out a good volume. But I think the sharper technical striker is probably going to be Cameron Smotherman in this spot here. And I think he's going to land clean a lot at range. And you've got Sidey that I think that, he hasn't looked that good. There's certain spots I just don't like what I've seen from him. He's 1-1 in the UFC, and he probably should be really 0-2 in the UFC, where his most recent fight against Garrett Armfield was a fight where I thought he clearly lost the fight, was outlanded on the feet, was taken down 4 times, had 5 minutes of control time, and still Sidey got the victory here. So he should really be 0-2 in the UFC here. And, he's tall, he's lanky, he does have those physical stature. But what I also is that he doesn't utilize it well. He's not a guy that really works his range, works his reach very well. Now, we're not going to really compare him to Corey Sandhagen, but Corey Sandhagen, who's long, lanky, very good at utilizing front kicks, landing shots, with his arm fully extended. He really utilizes range, reach, footwork. All those things make you very difficult to really touch and go. And I don't really see Sidey having any of that ability, or even really being able to utilize that. Even in the past, I don't think he's really utilized that very much. And I think in the pocket, I think that's going to be a lot of success for Cameron Smotherman. I think his boxing will be there. The tall man defense for Sidey, I think he's going to be able to land on him also. And at times you have seen, Sidey, who just can be sloppy, just can be very sloppy. I don't like even the way he takes shots very well. And I think that he can utilize his boxing skills, getting inside that distance, inside that reach, and finding opportunities to land. And I also do think that in order for Sidey to have success, he is another spot where he has to get takedowns. I think there has to be the ability to get the takedowns, get this fight to the ground. Yes, there can be issues there for Smotherman, but also the fact that there's an inability for Sidey to really even find success on these takedowns. So when you're looking at it here, over his 2 fights in the UFC, Sidey is 0-8 on takedowns. So not very good overall. I think this fight plays out on the feet. I think Cameron Smotherman is going to have the opportunity to land and really outland him over the distance, or even really hurt him and find a finish. So I do like Cameron Smotherman here at this plus number. We have seen this line come in, but I do like Smotherman here at plus 120. And the last one here we're going to talk about is Gaston Bolanos. He is minus 140 on the comeback. Here we got Quang Lee plus 120. Now, in this spot here, this line did open up Bolanos minus 220, and you did have Lee around that plus 180 number. We've seen money consistently come in on Lee. And the reason that I believe the money's coming in on him is the perception of the path to victory here for Quang Lee. And it's going to be the wrestling. And obviously that's going to be a situation that he's going to be looking to utilize there, looking to mix it in, looking to kind of push that kind of pace. But I just haven't been that impressed overall, really, with what I've seen from Quang Lee and his wrestling ability there. And it's not only just the fact that, I think his wrestling is subpar, but it's also, there's times where he's not even utilizing it. That also, I think, is a problem. And I think that's really where it opens up opportunities here for Bolanos and his striking. And, against Chris Gutierrez, he stuffed a ton of the takedowns, outlanded him on the feet. Now, I know it's Gutierrez, he's obviously a little bit of a higher level compared to these guys, but he still was able to, shun those takedowns away and outland him. But then even against Zhao Long, which is a fight where he only shot 2 takedowns against Long. And I thought that's a bad look too, where he probably should have been looking for takedowns and he got outlanded on the feet. I thought that was a pretty bad look overall. While I think Bolanos starts to appear to at least, I guess, elevate his grappling and elevate his wrestling. And I think that is a huge part to his game, where he's, a high level striker. That's where he wants to utilize. And if he can start to really put that together and start to really put together some defensive ability, keeping the fight on the feet, I think that's where he finds success. And I think he's going to have the physicality advantage, the strength advantage in this fight, in the clinch, and have the ability to really create space. And even the fact that when he's taken down, he's pretty good at getting up. His get up game is solid. He can create space, get back to his feet, and start to utilize, his tools at range. And that's where I think this fight plays out on the feet. I think it's mostly going to be a striking fight at distance here. And I think that Bolanos is the far better striker. I think that he's got, he's the far harder hitter, solid Muay Thai, and just has the ability to, I think, really cause a lot of the damage in this fight on Lee. And Lee just got KO'd against Long, who's a worse striker than Bolanos. So I think that, again, it really shows us that Bolanos can go out there and really put the pain on Lee. And, and also Lee is very hittable. Over his 2 UFC fights, he is a large striking negative differential. And I think that, again, this is going to be a spot where Bolanos money has come in on Lee. And I think Bolanos at this price, now that it's come down, it actually might even come down even more. But I think right now at -142 is a strong number. So I'm taking Gaston Bolanos to get the job done. So there you have it for my plays for UFC Des Moines. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. I already have 3 plays up for clients. We'll be adding to that as we get closer to fight night. And again, we've got 9 straight UFC events incoming, a lot of opportunity to place our money in strong positions. And don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you think about the main event. And with that being said, let's cash.